everyone, and welcome to the Winging It F1 podcast Styrian Grand Prix review. It was, I don't know, I'd say moderate Styrian Grand Prix. Maybe didn't live up to the hype that had been built up over the last couple of rounds, but it was still enjoyable. I enjoyed it, and it had a very good first lap, which I will talk about later, even if the others don't want to. But who are those others? I hear you ask. No, I don't, because this is a recording. But those others are Nigel Chu and Freddie Coates. How are you both? And Freddie, are you sat on the floor?
I'm not sat on the floor, and I'm doing very well. I have got my laptop propped up on a box from a curry house that I am yet to put meaningless bottles of cider and stationery in, which is all because, dear listener, I am moving property because it's that time of year for students where their houses run out of contract. So I have been packing all day and I am in a great state, which is why my lighting is slightly different, because I packed my light.
I like the phrase "run out of contract," like using little bits of the piece of paper as you go through the year, and then it finally runs out at the end of June.
It's like those calendars in Phineas and Ferb where you like peel off the front of it each day. It's
Nigel,
like, oh no,
how are
on
you?
the last day of my calendar.
I'm fine. I've been watching cyclists crash for the last 3 days, basically. That's been my
Ooh,
weekend.
you monster.
Yeah, I know.
What's going on outside your window? What have you put there?
You don't want to know that.
There's actually just a cat that keeps putting its paw out and tripping them up.
Oh.
On that point, it's been a fantastic weekend of sport that has extended into the day. It's been three scintillating Tour de France stages. There's been the Euros, there's been rugby, there's been the best Premiership final I've ever seen, and the Lions playing. And it's just amazing. I love it. It's a great time to be alive and not have any work and have moved out and be at home so you can watch all of it. I'm loving life.
This podcast.
Adam, you're like this. My mum bumped into the entire Exeter Chiefs team on the day of the final. Yeah, she bumped into the game. Like, oh, whoops, you're right, game. She bumped into the whole team on their way to the final, which was cool.
Oh, very cool.
And one of my friends played for the Harlequins. He didn't get to play on that day, but he does play for Harlequins. So he's
she
happy.
Talk to them, or did she just go see them across the street or whatever?
Oh, I don't know. My dad made some joke about the fact that they would have had a handful, but whatever.
I've got a friend who's friends with someone who plays for the Harlequins. So yeah.
I've got no rugby-related friends. But anyway, after I've got all of that out the way, we'll move back to the Styrian Grand Prix. What do you both think of it? Because I thought I really liked the first lap. I think it's the best first lap of the year. There was just so much going on. Really? To me, anyway, I really liked it. Yeah, there was the Hamilton, Perez, Norris battle, I think, going on. There was a joust further back. There was Leclerc and Gasly coming together. Was it Alonso and Stroll had a good battle going through? Oh, it was just I really liked it. There was kind of stuff to watch all the way through the lap, and it was a complete lap as well, which we haven't had for a lot of first laps. It feels like this year so far. I really like that. After that, it kind of dulled down a bit. There wasn't really a battle for the lead. There wasn't even kind of any way that a strategy could have helped Hamilton. I think there was a bit of a intrigue for the final podium spot, and I think Leclerc really lit it up. But yeah, what do you? I don't know. I'd rate it a 6 out of 10 as a race. I think
it was probably the joint worst race of the year for me, along with Monaco. It really didn't grab me at all, I'd say.
Yeah, I know what you both mean. That's the kind of thing. Like, it was dull, but also had good bits to it. And it's kind of like there was no opportunity for storylines to develop after about lap 8 was the kind of thing that made it a bit gentle, I kind of thought. I mean, things did, like, you know, the George Russell despair, which I'm sure we'll get onto. But I think because we've been so treated with fights for the lead, and even in Monaco, Sainz was 3 seconds off Verstappen for the majority of it, and Bottas was closer in the early stages. There was still intrigue at the front, whereas in this race, I think it was so in the pocket of Red Bull so early on in that race that it felt that's what kind of soured it, unfortunately. Like, yeah, you can have a DRS train with lots of cars in it for a long time, which is obviously cars close to each other, but it was, that issue you get where one car is just that little bit too far in front, and then the rest of them behind are able to defend and defend and defend and defend, defend and defend. And that went from Alonso back to Giovinazzi, I think, at points, which was, basically 7th to 14th, which is, a good cusp to be close to each other, but there wasn't that kind of opportunity to be Banzai and to keep it closer.
Yeah. We would do a boring race, I think, and I guess we kind of got it.
I think it was a third worst race. I think Portimao's still my worst, and then this is probably joint with Monaco.
I can't think Portimao's the worst.
Wheel to wheel twice.
Yeah, we had a whole fight for the lead for a long time, and then there was opportunity for me. Portimao, like it was toing and throwing the gap at the front for a long time and that kind of thing, and then it kept going all the way to the pit stops with Verstappen versus Bottas and all of that, and I found that very exciting. More exciting than I did with this one.
That's why I said it was subjectively my third worst race of the season.
Yeah, but I'm telling you why it shouldn't
third worst one, not objectively. But anyway, again, bogged down. Who was your driver of the day for it?
Not Leclerc.
Completely disagree on that.
Same. I'd say Leclerc.
Okay. His race was good, but his race was good because his start of the race was bad.
Yeah.
And I don't know. For me, I think Sainz had a better race because of the way Sainz executed his strategy in such a way that was just brilliant. That he went from wherever he started, 11th or 12th, and finished in 6th. And Leclerc should have been higher than where he was because you can see what Sainz did with his strategy. So I think Leclerc, unfortunately, left a bit too much on the table to be driver of the day for me.
I'll let Nigel go.
Oh, right.
I'll go again. Leclerc left too much on the table.
Nigel, what do you think?
I want to know what Adam thinks.
I was going to say, I don't think it can be Leclerc because it was kind of like Hamilton in Imola. He made a crucial error, but then his comeback drive was phenomenal. Because of that mistake, he didn't execute the perfect or near perfect race. So I don't think a driver who does something pretty silly, because it was a bit of a clumsy move to puncture Pierre Gasly's left rear tyre. I don't think he can be driver of the day for me. There's probably 3 or 4 other drivers I'd have ahead of him at least.
I think for me, he made the race. To be honest, it was him coming back through the field that was the most exciting, most actiony part of it. To be honest, so I think there's that aspect. It was a fantastic recovery drive. Yes, it was his mistake that caused it, but he still came back through, and I think that was a very good drive from a poor position. I don't think many drivers could have done that. So he's mine. So after you both said who it isn't, who is both of yours or each of yours?
Well, I just said Carlos Sainz, but I'd also put Fernando Alonso up there based on the way he completely trounced Esteban Ocon this weekend in a track. They've been very open as a team, Alpine, about the fact that this car doesn't work on this track, and yet he still managed to get it into Q3 and still managed to basically to score points somehow in the Alpine. I think that was a fantastic job. And also, you can never ignore Lando Norris after the race he had. I think they both did better. All 3 of them, Sainz, Alonso, and Norris, deserved it more, in my opinion.
Freddie's taken 1/6 of the grid there for driver of the day. That probably means I'm left. Yeah, I'm left with Verstappen then, I think. He was pretty flawless. There was a few moments on the team radio as usual with Verstappen where you think, there might be a problem, but he had it all under control. And he does, when he has the car, just like Hamilton, he just delivers and executes and extracts the maximum performance or near maximum performance from the car. And he never came under any threat. And the gap to Perez as well all weekend on such a short track. It was 2 or 3 attempts, maybe a bit more at crucial moments. I think that's quite impressive too. So I think Verstappen gets it for me.
Yeah, I think he was probably the best driver on the day. But driver of the day is a bit ambiguous. What is it? Is it the best Monegasque driver of the day?
Best driver on the day.
Best Monegasque driver of the day.
Yeah, if so, it's Charles Leclerc every week.
To be fair, when you think about it, for a race that we've just, Nigel and I at least have said was, not fantastic. There were some actually very, very good standout performances across the field. And I think, we'll speak about Russell, but I think Raikkonen had a very good showing as well in the race after a poor qualifying. So he had a very good race. The other drivers we've obviously mentioned, but looking at where Verstappen was and then where Bottas and Perez was, I think Hamilton also did a very good job.
Yeah, I think for this to be a kind of contender for worst race of the season, 8 races in kind of shows the quality of the season so
previous
far.
7.
Really, yeah.
And the testing was fantastic.
That wasn't a race though, so you can't.
It had a sandstorm. It was brilliant.
Yeah. But yeah,
very exciting.
Covering off the win, obviously Verstappen took pole and the win. Hamilton was second without the pole, but with the fastest lap. Do you think there's anything that Mercedes and Hamilton could have done differently, or was it just Red Bull had a complete handle on this?
I think the combination of Red Bull and Verstappen was unbeatable at the weekend, I'd say. I don't think there's anything Hamilton could have done. Even perhaps if he took the lead at the start, who knows what would have happened. Perhaps it would have been a bit like Spain, where it took Hamilton a while to get past Verstappen. Perhaps it would have been the same here. We don't know, but to me, I think there's not much he could have done. And I think Mercedes really need to think about developing their car or doing something to try and claw back a little bit of time, because in qualifying, I don't think they have any chance. In the race, they're a bit closer on some tracks, as we saw in France and Azerbaijan and stuff. But I think almost certainly Verstappen is going to take probably like at least 10, 12 pole positions this year, I think.
And Lewis said as much regarding the developments. He views it that they need to bring something in the engine or in the car, because it felt like they were kind of soundly beaten this weekend.
And the engine is somewhere they can bring developments to, because the cost cap doesn't count for the power unit departments of companies. So, because otherwise it would be unfair for someone like Williams, say, to have a cost cap that can be solely put towards the car, whereas for Mercedes, then they've got to have that money towards power units as well, that kind of thing. So they
can't develop the performance, though, can you? It can only be reliability, that's the thing. Because it's the same engine for the whole year.
Well, no, it's not. They haven't done the engine freeze yet, have they?
No, they have. You can develop it over the winter. You can't develop it.
But Honda brought an upgrade last week. I thought they'd bring that in for 2022.
Not performance.
Oh, well, that's me told.
I'm 95% sure you can't.
I thought they were bringing it in for next year.
That's why Mercedes are banging on about how have Red Bull got this straight line speed, because they're confused how they were the benchmark and now they're not. And Honda bought a fresh engine for France, didn't they? But Red Bull have also been running a low rear wing, which has helped them with their straight line speed.
No, it's for 2022.
Yeah, I just had a look and it says
engine freeze 2022.
Sure you can't develop in season.
Well, I'll send you the link for the Formula One article if you want.
We'll put it in the description of the video as well.
It says a proposal to freeze power unit development from 2022 has been given unanimous approval. So that makes me think they're allowed to upgrade engines and power units at the moment in 2021. I don't know. I think I'm allowed to think that.
Yeah, I think it's you're allowed to upgrade until the end of 2021. Then it's frozen until 2025, I believe. Is it? I'm not sure whether it's the start or end of that year, season, whatever. But this will rumble and we'll probably put a correction out on Twitter if whoever's wrong. So after looking at those engine rules, Nigel, do you want to explain what we've found?
So basically, as far as I'm aware, and I'm 99% sure, you cannot bring any performance upgrade to your power unit. But Mercedes are not happy that Red Bull have found some straight line speed in the last couple of races. Now, Red Bull with Verstappen have taken the second power unit, as Freddie puts fire next to his nose, as you will be able to see on YouTube. They brought a second power unit to the French Grand Prix, which had a reliability upgrade. They also had a new fuel as well, which can help with performance. After Bahrain, Honda spotted a problem with Pierre Gasly's Honda engine, which meant that all 4 Honda-powered cars had to turn their engines down a little bit for the next 5 or 6 races. But now they've all got their fresh power units in the car. They can run at full pelt again with Red Bull's low downforce rear wing. That's why their straight line speed is so good, but there's no performance upgrades.
Well said. And keeping with that theme of the championship, where does this leave Hamilton and Mercedes? Because to me, it just feels like that Baku mishap mistake is becoming more and more costly, because if it weren't for that, he'd still be leading the championship. And, that is ultimately driver error. Obviously, you could say about Verstappen's crashing the same race and he could be further behind, but it was driver error that has cost them the lead of the championship, I think.
It's a really strange one to say that, but you're right. It's really strange for driver error to be the reason Hamilton's behind the championship, because it's all well and good being beaten fair and square in pace, because we can say that about lots of, Antonio Giovinazzi lost last year because he was in the Alfa Romeo and that kind of thing. But obviously he's also made a few driver errors. But anyway, that's not why he's not losing the world championship. Whereas for Lewis Hamilton, it is. And that's mad.
Yeah, there's a long way to go. So it's definitely not over. And I don't buy that Toto Wolff said that Mercedes won't be bringing any upgrades at all. I don't buy that. I'm sure there will be some small tweaks, or they will find something with tyre performance or work something out with the setup which can help them get the car into a better window, which seems to be a problem sometimes. Mercedes will get stronger. It's just whether it's going to be enough with Red Bull, who seem to be putting all their eggs into this year and just going for it with Verstappen to get the world title. Honda leaving as well. They want to win the world title with them. So it's going to be tricky, and it's a much bigger threat for Mercedes of losing the title compared to Ferrari in 2018 and 2017. This is very different. It's Red Bull look like the real deal, and they have to be favourites, but it's not over. I think Silverstone will be important, because that's usually a Mercedes and Hamilton track. If they're well beaten there, then we can probably really start talking about, can Mercedes bring it back? But for now, there's still 15, 16 races.
I agree with that. It's weird to think that there's still 2/3 of the season still to go. It just feels like there's been so much already. I guess if it was last season, we'd be halfway through. But there is still so much running. I was going to say the same, that Silverstone feels like a bit like Monaco, you said for Red Bull. It feels like Silverstone will be a big one for Mercedes in front of Hamilton's home fans as well. But
We've been here before.
Giovinazzi, if Giovinazzi can't, pick up the win there, I think that might be his bid over. It kind of reminds me of the tweet that's gone round for the last few years. At some point in the year, that's like, if Williams don't get a 1-2 here, then they are after the
and at every other race.
Yeah.
1-2 and fastest lap at every other race. And a specific set of results happens to the top teams as well. But
it's they're out of the Constructors' Championship.
I will say we've kind of been here before with Red Bull. I'm interested to see what your thoughts are on this. In 2013, where it was kind of open at the start of the season, you had Rosberg and Hamilton able to win races, Fernando Alonso too. Rosberg won 2 races that year, Alonso 2, Hamilton a race. So it was open against Vettel and Red Bull, and then he blitzed it with 9 on the trot to end the season. And that came before a regulation change, where then Red Bull were caught short. And how many laps did they do in testing in 2014? Negligible in comparison to a Grand Prix distance, basically. So you can't. I know it's not a power unit up regulation change, but are Red Bull and Hamilton alluded to this? Are Red Bull putting their eggs in one basket with by sacrificing what they could be doing next year?
Is that the season where Grosjean finished off as the best driver over the running bar bar Vettel. I think it is.
And they had a bigger drop off a year later as well, actually.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was the same Mercedes then, to be honest. I think Mercedes then were a lot more. They were strong in qualifying, but it just felt like they were still another season or two away in the race, even if those regulations had stayed in place. To be honest, I don't think. I don't kind of remember too much like the specific events, but I do remember kind of most races. Be like, oh, Mercedes are on par. I wonder if they can do it. No, they couldn't. Apart from as a couple of times or 3 times, as Freddie said. Nigel, do you concur with either of us?
If I remember right, the 2013 season, there was a tyre change because of the Silverstone blowouts. And then after that, Vettel won 9 races in a row because he changed the structure of the tyre. Whether that's a coincidence, we'll never know.
He was always good on those tyres, wasn't he?
Yeah. And interestingly, speaking of changing the tyres this year as well, because of the blowouts in Baku, there's talk about for the British Grand Prix that they're going to change the rear tyres or something like that. I don't know if that's going to have an effect. So I think it's slightly different. Whether putting all their eggs into this year into the basket for this year will hurt them next year. In theory, it should, but I mean,
they're pretty good
Red Bull, isn't
at
it?
what they're doing.
They're not go. Yeah, there will be a lot of people working on next year's car as well as this year's, I think. And I don't. It would be a massive surprise if they fell down to how much they fell in 2014. I think they should still be up there.
They're still one race.
I guess you just never know with these kind of things. But I think they're doing the right thing. I'll say that. I think. To be the team that ends Mercedes' dominance, to end Hamilton's reign, I think that's more important in a way. Or like just for reputation and history, I think it's the right thing to do for Red Bull.
I get that.
I get where you're coming from. I think it's difficult to judge that without kind of knowing how they'll do kind of post-regulation change. But I will say, I think this would be their most impressive championship win if they do get it. But moving on to the second Red Bull driver, actually, just a point on that, this race showed the difference between like two of the drivers at the top of their sport and two of the best drivers of the modern era in the Perez and Bottas, who are no slouches at all, and they just they were a class below Hamilton and Verstappen. But moving on to those two. Obviously Bottas got the podium, which I think is a decent result for Mercedes, really, to get a double podium. But he got that, I think, largely from a slow stop for Perez. It was a botch stop for Red Bull, which we very rarely see. I think it was about 5 seconds, and that allowed Bottas to get track position. And then Red Bull pitted Perez with, was it about 10 laps to go, or is it like
18, 19?
Oh, okay, it was around like 50. So, do you think that was the right strategy from Red Bull once after the pit stop, or do you think they should have, because Perez did seem to be closing in a bit on Bottas?
Oh, it was the right strategy, I think, because he never got to the gap he did in the final lap, even when he was closing in. He got to a second and a half, and then it kept going back to 2, back to second half, back to 2, back to second and a half. Couldn't get any closer, really. And unless he just shot his tyres and then basically let Bottas pass to the end of the race anyway with that. Even Perez would, with his tyre whispering skills, wouldn't have probably been able to make them last in that way. So I kind of think, it's the right thing to do. It's a bit of a gamble strategy. And if they'd gone a lap or 2 earlier, they probably could have done it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they left it a little bit too late. They didn't use the full stint or the possible full stint to extract the performance possibly. Well, it was the right thing. I don't think Perez was as good as he's been in recent races as well. He seemed to struggle to get to grips with the car compared to Verstappen all weekend. And for Bottas, it was a good recovery, I guess, from his pretty stupid mistake in practice.
Was it a good recovery? I mean, actually, it was kind of handed to him when you think about the race. I mean, he drove the race he needed to really well. But like you say, Perez had a bad pit stop. Otherwise, he would have been behind Perez. And Norris essentially got out of the way for him. So it's kind of like,
I think he did his job, because I think if he was second anyway, he would have finished third I think, even if he started on the front row. So I don't think his position really changed that much. He just had Perez as a bit more of a threat, I guess.
Okay, that's fair enough.
I think it was a good or decent race from Bottas. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Perez would have had an opportunity. I feel like Perez would have had an opportunity to attack Bottas if he'd stayed out, but you know, it's like you say, it's one of those. It was a gamble either way, really, and I don't know. I might have been tempted to keep him out because I think he might have been able to make that work, but
put the pressure on more.
He gave him a very good shot with that. He also took the fastest lap off Hamilton. Hamilton obviously got it back at the end when he pitted, but for a time, Hamilton had it for a fair chunk of the race, but Perez did initially take it back when he came out.
I think the tyre offset, I think the fact that Perez's some of his laps were 2 seconds faster than Bottas on such a short lap, on a lap that's only a 68 second lap, so the fact that he's going 2 seconds faster. So I think because of that, I think that makes it fair enough that they went for it. It probably was more traffic that got in the way than lap time, really.
Moving on to someone who was traffic for Bottas in the first stint, but then eventually he got past. I think Norris drove a very good race. Lando Norris finished 5th, and it was a really quiet 5th because bar the start where kind of he was bottling up Bottas, then he wasn't really, he had no battles. He was just there driving around in a afternoon in Austria in Styrian mountains.
Hats off to Lando for his gutsy as hell move around the outside of Perez and nearly Hamilton at turn 4 on the first lap. You spoke about it earlier, Adam. That was really good because otherwise he was taken by Perez and then he took him back really well. He did on heavy fuel, which is one of where the midfield cars can really separate from the top field cars, because like Lando shows that there's a lot more similarity in pace on low fuel in qualifying, but then on heavy fuel with a slightly unstable rear in the McLaren, he was still able to just plant it past Perez and really, make Perez's life a lot more difficult with that for a good few laps until he was just doing his own race. But he got his elbows out nicely in that one, did Lando.
Yeah, flawless weekend. I think the only thing I can criticise him for was maybe not being a bit more aggressive when defending against Bottas and Perez, but I can see why he wanted to do it. He didn't want to keep looking in his mirrors, lose time, look after his car as well, etc. Smart drive, another great performance. 7th top 5 finish, I think, as well, which is remarkable consistency.
Huge
in that car.
13 races in the points.
Yeah,
I think just
he's just driving better than ever for me.
Yeah, I don't actually think he defended poorly against Perez.
He kind of let them through to me.
That's the thing.
I think the Perez
defense wasn't the option, really. Like you say, he let them through. Didn't need to defend from them. You could see the way he was sat. He was staring at the car going past him. It's not defense, so it's fair enough.
I don't really think. I think the Perez one, he just didn't expect him. Perez, as they kind of got into the braking stoke, I think Perez was 150 yards or meters, whatever the braking boards are, back, and Norris was nearly at the 100. So I just think he didn't expect.
No, he was
to make that move.
He let him through. Perez wouldn't have gone for that if he wasn't letting him through. He would have had Norris would have consciously broken earlier for Perez to actually see that there was an opportunity there. I think, based on, like you say, how far back he was. Perez wouldn't have gone for a move that early in the race like that.
He was looking in his mirrors as well. I think he knew that he was there.
I don't know.
But that's fine. That's mature driving. It's not getting caught up in a battle with a car that's faster than you. It's saying, I could get a podium here, but I could also just ruin my chances of getting points by fighting for it now. And took 10 points, 5th place, and was still obviously in the best position to capitalise if anything happens to Bottas or Perez or Hamilton or Verstappen ahead anyway. And did the race that McLaren wanted him to do, which is something that a lot of drivers probably wouldn't have done. They would have been a bit more like, I can stick it out, but he just did, the absolute minimum race time. I think is one of those things that people talk about, particularly in a slower car. I mean, he's not in a slow car in comparison to the majority of the grid, but it's still about, like, we don't know what these guys are going to do behind. We don't know what's going to happen ahead. Let's keep it as clean as possible. And I just want to ask one question for Nigel. Did he get a 10 out of 10 in your ratings?
He did not, no.
Oh, what did he get? Like,
he got the joint highest. Yeah, no, he got the joint highest, which was a 9, along with Verstappen and one other driver, which we haven't talked about yet.
I think it might be coming up soon. Is it the other British driver on the grid that we've not talked about, George Russell?
Yes, it's Will Stevens. No, yeah.
Will the lad Stevens?
No.
It's his birthday today.
Norris's teammate.
This.
And Norris's teammate as a McLaren test driver, sim driver, whatever.
We should say happy birthday to Will Stevens.
Yes,
we are the only podcast who said happy birthday to Will Stevens.
Not since 2015.
It's the only podcast we've done where we said happy birthday to anyone, I think.
Might have said it to each other once, I'm sure.
That's true, yeah, maybe.
No.
Nah. But yeah, it was just a Russell weekend all the way through. It was fantastic qualifying to put it. Was it 12th or 11th? No, it was 11th and 8,000th away from the top 10. And then he was going great guns in the race. I think he was up to 8 early on, and just stayed in the top 10 comfortably in the top 10 until his pit stop. And he went in for his pit stop and it went wrong. I think it was putting like air in the engine or something in the engine.
He had a nitrogen they're putting into the engine. They had a leak, like the valves that they've got to require it to be topped up basically, and so they had to put nitrogen in it in the pit stops. But I think the leak was proving to be much worse than they thought it was, which is why he then pitted the lap later to get another top up to see if that would see him to at least, I don't know, later on. But I think he had a really, really bad leak in that engine, which is why he retired. Because you can top it up and you can run around in essentially 15th. He probably could have been at after like other cars pitted, and you can top up a leak, but it was just it was clearly an uncontrollable leak.
Yeah, just a massive
like a football game.
Yeah. There's a massive shame because
that's Leeds.
At a football game, then, or a pub.
Anyway, France weekend or France race was great as well when he got 12th, but this was another level in a way. Just missed out on Q3 by the slimmest of margins, and his lap was outstanding as well. I looked back on it, and he pretty much nailed it. But then in the race, I think the thing which you mentioned, Adam, where he said it was he was comfortably inside the top 10. I thought he would drop back, but instead it looks like he was going to move forward ahead of Alonso. He was just he kind of fitted into the midfield and looks like a proper midfield front runner. He was just exceptional. He was just brilliant.
He was another one that mixed it up on the first lap as well. But that all begs the question: why didn't he get a 10?
I don't, because he didn't finish the race, so it's hard to judge. I can't give a 10 to someone who's not finished the race because he might have took out the whole field.
You just wax lyrical about how much you want basically to have babies with him, and now you're still not going to give him a 10.
Yeah, for half the race, he was brilliant. The other half, who knows?
He was still brilliant. He went into his media interviews really well.
Even
I would say about Russell is he was behind Daniel Ricciardo early on because Ricciardo got a mega start, actually. Really good start for Ricciardo, up to 8th. And then Russell, though, was able to catch up with Ricciardo. When Ricciardo dropped out, he was able to catch up with Alonso, who had a bit of a gap there, which Ricciardo had been in. And Russell was able to keep himself in the DRS of Alonso, which I think was the crucial bit of him not getting swallowed up by whoever would have been behind him at that point, cars. So
shark.
Yeah, a shark. So I think he was able to execute the race really brilliantly and was able to go really fast when he needed to go really fast and manage it really well as well. And he did that on the medium tyres because he started in 10th place because of Yuki Tsunoda's blocking of Bottas in qualifying.
It wasn't a block.
It was a harsh penalty. I agree. And Yeah, he was on the free choice of tyres, but basically still technically the slower tyres. So he was able to stick with faster cars on slower tyres. So yeah, I am very, very happy for George. And I'm just really sad about what he said afterwards, which he feels like this is a perfect storm. It's going to be really hard to replicate it. And it's true. And it feels like this was the biggest missed opportunity he's had for Williams so far, I think.
If he keeps driving like this, I'm sure he'll get points this season. If he stays at he will.
I don't, because I think this race is confirmation that he is cursed. Like he is cursed. He's had so many like opportunities, and just something goes wrong, and sometimes it's his fault, and sometimes it's not. But whatever it is, it's just he's cursed. I
am more sure of George Russell getting points than I am of England winning against Germany.
Well, that's not hard. No one aren't going to win against Germany.
Wait. No, I just realised that doesn't make that.
Yeah. I think if George had finished, if the race had carried on where George was, if you look at basically where like Alonso was, George probably would have finished 10th based on Ferrari's comeback. That's 1 point. That's really good. It solidifies 9th ahead of Haas. But if he'd finished where he was when he retired from the race, which was 8th, then that would have been 4 points. And that would have put Williams ahead of Alfa Romeo in the constructors, which is a big as hell deal. So if that can happen again, if they can get 4 points with George Russell, they won't.
There is no natural explanation for having this many opportunities and it going wrong every single time. Like
it's never driven this well though, and that's why I think it will. I think this is going to give him so much confidence and belief. I think it will happen because I don't think this was better than his Sakir performance for me. This is best performance in F1.
Yeah, and what happened in his Sakir performance?
He only got 3 points. He could have got more points in this race.
More bad luck. A jumbo helping of bad luck. So it's not happening. He's cursed.
Bad luck.
It'll happen.
Jumbo batters bad luck with chili sauce, please.
Yes. Some drivers that you mentioned there, Alonso and Tsunoda and Lance Stroll, all rounded out the top 10. It's kind of quite a nice
great race.
All drivers who've like been worse off in their teams up to this point, at least in the standings, I think. And yeah, and now they all did well and they all drove well. Like it was kind of competitive, those end of the top 10 spaces, and I think there was good races from all of them to get there, particularly Tsunoda actually.
Past couple of races, Alonso has really, been back. I think this has been Alonso. He said, "Give me like similar to Perez, give me 5 races, won the 6th race, that kind of thing." Alonso was kind of in a similar boat of like, let me sort of settle back in. It'll take me a few rounds, and it seems like he has settled back in, and he's performing, vintage Fernando now, and is being really good. And I think you just look at where Ocon was. I mean, Ocon probably registered 10th for about a lap in the pit stop stages, and then went back down to where he finished 14th or 15th. Not a hope in hell of being in the race. And Alonso forced that car to be fighting for decent points actually, and I think that was a really good drive from him. I think Lance Stroll as well. Adam spoke about the first lap. Lance Stroll did an absolute worldly of a move around the outside of Fernando Alonso that basically secured him a points finish as well. So well done, Lance. Very good race. Yuki.
It's what he needed, I think, because he's had some mistakes. He had a clean weekend. He didn't shine, but I think he didn't make any errors or do anything silly. It's what he needs. He can build on it, hopefully, especially because we're racing at the same track this weekend. But on Alonso, I think the Alpine, in terms of race pace, is probably seventh best car. It really is not good, but Alonso's managing to kind of just extract everything from the car and get those points, whereas Ocon is really struggling at the moment. Well done to Alonso. Clean weekend for Tsunoda. And Stroll, he was all right.
What did Stroll do badly?
To be fair, he beat Vettel.
I think Stroll had a very, very good
weekend. So I
think he had a really good whole weekend at Stroll. I think the Aston Martin didn't deserve to be in Q3, and he put it there. So I think hats off to Stroll. from
I
me.
should give him more credit.
Yes.
I think, yeah. I mean, Tsunoda made it into Q3 and outqualified Charles Leclerc in Q2. So yeah, I think it was, as you said. And then I don't know. It's difficult with the grid penalty. I kind of, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, that's quite. I think he'll get done for that. But equally, like, I don't know. That was just kind of my instinctive reaction when I first saw it happen or saw it happen live. But outside of that, I think all of them drove well. Probably Gasly was the unlucky one because he got tagged by Leclerc. He probably should have been in that battle for kind of sixth-ish, sixth or seventh, and he wasn't able to. So yeah, and it caused carnage as well because he, like from the shot at the top of the hill. I don't know if I assume it's the helicopter shot actually at the top of the hill for that turn 3.
Sky.
Then you could just see him just being absolutely swamped. It just looked like there was a dead weight.
Yeah, I thought he had an engine problem at first because
so did I. And then he
I spotted the puncture. I saw him get a puncture and was like, well, he's obviously got a puncture. And then he dropped back and was like, yeah, definitely got a puncture. I was like, well, why? He's not going to turn into the corner here. He's not going to turn in. And then Giovinazzi assumed he was. And unfortunately, to be fair to Giovinazzi, he couldn't go anywhere, but Gasly couldn't go anywhere. Complete racing incident that spun Giovinazzi and gave Latifi a puncture, I think, as well. Which is all a bit of a shame because it did, the chain reaction from Leclerc not knowing that Alonso was on the other side of Gasly, which he couldn't have seen anyway.
Would he have got a penalty, do you think?
No, lap 1. I think it was. I think the only thing
mission to punish every single crash with a penalty.
Definitely no. It was 3 cars going down a straight. You can only in your periphery see the car next to you because the car on the other side is blocked by a car. So, and they're both blue anyway. So it's like, even if you could see it, you assume it's the same car.
Blue things are famously invisible.
I've got 2 sets of glasses cases here. They're similar colours, but they're the same glasses case. That's my point there.
Freddie has in a blue t-shirt in front of a blue message pinboard, so he is actually invisible. You can just see his head moving around.
This space behind me is Schrodinger's air. You don't know if I'm actually part of the wall.
Well,
and I've beaten you in surrealness.
I maybe would have given Leclerc a penalty.
Well, that's a good way to get back on track.
Yeah, but you would have given him. You would have given Max Verstappen a penalty for doing a burnout.
No, I wouldn't have. That was.
You want to be like, oh, I hate you all. I hate everyone. Have a penalty.
How could they give a reprimand for that? But they don't say anything when you get 3 cars doing donuts in Abu Dhabi, nose to tail. They don't say anything for that. Stupid.
Because on the devil's advocate, because it's no longer a live racetrack, and they do that once everyone's crossed the line, whereas only 1 car across the line, and that's what they'll say. But then it's like, well, he's the winner, so obviously he can celebrate when he crosses the line. You silly people. But yeah. It's penalties gone mad. That's a protest in London.
Penalties gone mad. The world's gone nuts.
Speaking of celebrations, I was really confused by Tim Merlier's celebration in the Tour de France today because he was like shushing, but I didn't really get who was shushing. And it's kind of like there's been like
loud bicycles.
3 crashes behind you really recently. I don't know. I kind of felt a bit strange. But anyway, that's just me. You mentioned Giovinazzi there, Freddie, but also Kimi Räikkönen finished 11th. Was it you who said he had a good race before we started recording? And do you want to talk about? Well, you have to talk about it now because I've set you up.
I said it when we were recording.
Even better.
So let's touch on Alfa Romeo. But I think Kimi Räikkönen kept his nose
in
clean
the pessimism stakes. Got to get that in.
There is a bit of pessimism in the pessimism stakes this week, to be fair. Because I think Giovinazzi could have had a really good race based on his pace across the weekend, and it was a shame that he got caught up in that first lap stuff and he couldn't recover from it really, because he was half a second ahead of Raikkonen in qualifying. We were talking about gaps between Perez and Verstappen and separating the great from the good and that kind of thing. And I'm not saying Giovinazzi's the great and Raikkonen's the good, but what I am saying is like that's a phenomenal pace differential between the Alfa Romeo teammates there. And I think Giovinazzi will be one to watch for the Austrian Grand Prix next week if he can keep out of the way of a wayward Gasly, because I think Raikkonen showed the pace in that car in the race, and I think Giovinazzi had just more underlying pace than Raikkonen did. He did at Austria last year as well, actually, and he got his first points there in F1 in 2019 to Giovinazzi. He goes well here, so I think, yeah, there could have been more from Alfa Romeo, even though they got 11th place with Raikkonen.
Yeah, I think he could have scored points as well too, Giovinazzi, if it wasn't for that, if he wasn't involved in the clash. But yeah, Raikkonen, good
10
recovery.
points in the ratings. I gave him a 10 out of 10 in my ratings, like I do every driver, just to wind up Nigel. Apart from Charles Leclerc, got a 9.5.
For your website, which I won't name for promotion.
No, I engrave it into the wall.
You're leaving it for next week for when the new people come in.
The new tenants are going to be like, "Oh, Giovinazzi, and he got a 10 out of 10. Really mad."
let's hope.
Why do you only give Charles Leclerc a 9.5 out of 10?
Oh. Anyway,
the driver who finished behind. Actually, no. Let's not do that transition. Let's talk about two drivers who maybe. Because I was going to say Schumacher, because him and Mazepin had like another coming together that I don't know if they actually did come together, but there was Schumacher trying to go up the inside of turn 3 and kind of locks up, and it's great. I'm kind of loving that battle, and it kind of like it's just fun at the back of the grid rather than both driving around a la Williams 2019. But the one I wanted to talk about in a roundabout way was Daniel Ricciardo, because I'd put him and Ocon down as drivers who kind of behind their teammate and disappointing weekends, and we've already talked about Ocon. So Ricciardo, he did have an issue like kind of early on in the race. I think it was with the engine where he kind of had to slow down. I saw it in the race, I was like, oh, that's great pass by Tsunoda, and then like, oh, it's just no Ricciardo slowing down. But yeah, it's kind of he eventually finished 13th, and it was just another like weekend. He qualified 13th or 14th. No, it was 13th, wasn't it?
13th
as well.
He qualified 10 places behind Lando Norris. Yeah. But he started 10 places behind Lando Norris. He qualified 9, but that's still half the grid behind. And that's worrying. I know we've been
unacceptable for me.
Yeah.
I'm generally go that far. It is unacceptable for a driver of his caliber to be qualified that far behind.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting phrase you've said there, of his caliber. So you think he's a great driver, so isn't McLaren's fault?
No, it's Ricciardo's fault entirely. So someone of that quality, you can't be that far behind race after race after race. Yes, he had the problem during the race after a good start, but then, you've got to try and come back from that problem. He didn't show anything after that. It's hard to overtake, of course, but it's just not good enough.
Leclerc did it.
Yeah, exactly.
Raikkonen finished 11th.
And the real worry is he was second in free practice too, I think. So I'm thinking, we can have a good weekend here possibly. But then overnight, he loses the car for whatever reason, maybe the conditions. So
someone rob it.
It's just a real problem. And during qualifying, he's slower in every single corner, especially on the exits of a corner. Well, he's losing half a tenth on every corner, and that.
Well, think about it like this: there's
resolve.
There's 7 real corners around this racetrack, and he was 7/10 off in qualifying. Yeah. So he's a 10th off a corner.
He's just slower everywhere.
Humongous. Because if you think about, your top car and your 5th best car, and if that car is a 10th off in a corner, if it's being driven by the same drivers, then you say, God, that car's so much slower. Ricciardo's making this car basically double as worse than it should be. It's not understandable at how that's happening. I mean, I know Norris is talking about how he's struggling to drive it as well, but I feel like that's just a bit of mind games, to be honest, because I mean, maybe it's got a bit of an unstable rear end, but that's what does the other cars have behind it then? And he was able to drive the Renault fantastically last year. So
Ricciardo says he's driving on the limit as well. So that when he goes back, looks at the data, 1, he'll be confused, but 2, mentally, that is going to be very, very difficult to deal with, and it's hard to come back by. So he's got the fortune, I guess, of going to the same circuit again. but I don't think I think he's got massive issues. No, and I think this could be similar to to the route Vettel went down last year. I think it's that bad.
I think the mirror of comparison to Ricciardo's race that we've just had is that he pitched on the exact same lap as Carlos Sainz, the exact same strategy. He started position behind Carlos, I think, and it was ahead of Carlos Sainz in the first few laps until he obviously had his sort of engine freeze moment. And I don't know what Adam's doing. He's
trying to give a mirror of comparison.
Oh, okay. Adam put a picture of a mirror or a camera on the screen. Anyway, I completely lost my train of thought. So so they both pitted on lap 41, I think. I'm trying to remember. I did a bit of a study on it, and Sainz then overtook
on it as well.
Yeah, I've written 40,000 words on this overnight, and now I've got a master's. Sainz overtook everyone and got to 6th. Ricciardo didn't and stayed in 13th. That's what makes it just something else, is the fact that, like, you know, everything's been done right for him. Yeah, there was the engine, basically software issue, because it was fine afterwards. But then it's just like, look, this strategy is the correct midfield strategy, but you stayed in 13th. You've not got up to base. He should have been ahead of Leclerc at the end of that race.
I mean, we talked about how in France that was his best race, along with Spain, perhaps, of the season.
He was still behind Norris, yeah.
He was in the second half of the race. He wasn't really at the races. So if that's the level, if that's his best level or best performance of the year, it's just, yeah.
I think we're just all we're all frustrated and annoyed at it, because we all, Nigel, you said this about the quality of the driver. We all hugely rate Ricciardo. You don't win any of the races he's won by luck. He's won them by getting his elbows out and gritting his teeth and nailing pace and nailing overtakes and stuff like that. And you don't win like a track like China or a track like Monaco. It's not like he's a one-trick pony either. It's in him, but he's running out of time.
I can't defend him anymore. I think that's why I'm so.
You never defend anyone. You've given him 1 out of 10.
Yeah, we'll just have to see how it goes for Ricciardo. Who knows? To me, it doesn't really feel like there's much. I don't feel like, if only like this was in place, then he'd do better next weekend. But we don't know. It's F1. We never know, except sometimes we do. But anyway, anyone else on the grid you want to talk about that we've not mentioned already?
I would like to just one final point on Ricciardo, which is that apparently his pace wasn't awful at the end of the race. It's just that, it's everything else that comes with needing to use that pace, like racing and stuff like that. Apparently in the races, in the qualifying, it's not there, but in the race, if he's on his own, he can do it. But it's like,
sounds like he's scraping the barrel there to me.
Yeah,
it really does. If that's what he's going for, I'm quick at the beginning of the stint, I'm quick at the end of the stint.
He wasn't the one who went for it. It was his engineer, so it probably is scraping the barrel, to be honest. It's all right, mate. No, let's get you a pizza or a schnitzel.
We'll see how he goes over the next few races, but he's got a massive challenge.
Do you see him losing his seat?
I mean, we talked about that, didn't we?
Yeah, we had this conversation 2 weeks ago, and we all said no, not.
And to me,
yeah, exactly. It's probably an interesting question now.
Definitely, no way. I still think no, mainly because I think different regulations, different car, it might suit him better, and we know how good he is, and he can kind of rely on his reputation, I think, and it would be pretty risky from McLaren, I think, to get rid of a driver who's that good. So I'm still going to say no, but
you should hire us. We know so much about it when we speak now. Like Nigel, you rate everything so highly. So.
I don't rate things highly. I don't rate. I rate things
lowly, but never highly.
Like a Christmas carol.
As I alluded to there, looking ahead to next week, we are, of course, on the same track. Well, we aren't, but the F1 is, of course, on the same track again. So we'll just do a couple of predictions for that.
Hopefully it rains, because then we'll get something different. I mean, we've got new tyres, so we might get Silverstone.
Oh, yeah.
Thunderstorm that was meant to happen on, was it Saturday or Sunday afternoon?
Surprise,
still hasn't happened.
It still materialise.
Didn't happen overnight, didn't happen today, won't happen tomorrow.
If we had to predict when
it will happen in August.
If we had to predict when rain would happen in F1, I think I get it right every time. But there we go. So who do you both think is going to win and be on the podium and get pole position?
I think if it's clean, I think it's going to be a Verstappen sweep. I don't see how Mercedes can turn things around.
Will it be clean though?
Yeah, I think it will. I think the teams will have learned everything they can. Everyone will improve a little bit. The softer tyres will only help Red Bull more for me because I think Mercedes have an advantage on the harder tyres. So I think everything points to Verstappen unless he has an engine problem or something.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Oh, thank you. In that same northern accent.
I was going... No.
What?
I nearly went a bit brummy.
It was kind of like a parody Somerset accent.
Yes, it was.
It's kind of like that.
He was going to go speaking a northern accent. I was.
It's just that's horrific. Of all the performances we kind of dissected over this podcast, I think that's the worst. There, I think Hamilton will win just because he has to. Like, I don't know.
He has to win, otherwise he won't get his 100th win at Silverstone.
Even
he has to win.
Like,
and you hate him because you're awful.
I do not hate him at all.
You only didn't even give him a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I would go for that. For the podium of Verstappen and Perez.
I think Verstappen, Hamilton, Perez podium.
And pole, I'll say will I? Yeah, I'll say Verstappen. Will I?
You have.
No,
you said
Hamilton. I'll go Hamilton.
Ooh, interesting. That'll be fun.
I hope there's rain, just because I'd love to see Hamilton versus Verstappen in the wet on a pretty old school track. That'd be really fun. But yeah, we'll just have to see. Either way, Red Bull have to be favourites now.
Either rain.
Yeah.
Cool. Wasn't a joke.
Oh,
good.
It's just 2 words next to each other.
Okay.
Let's have a quick search at Red Bull Ring weather. If I type in R, it's the first thing that comes up now. Oh my goodness, it's going to rain from Wednesday through to the end of when it sees weather forecasts. So that means it must rain.
That means it'll be sunny for all of that time. Who do you think is going to finish 8th?
Gasly. It's not a shock finish for him, really.
Science.
Nor is that.
Ricciardo.
Yeah. That's nice.
Well, I don't think he'll get any points.
Well, there we go. We will see.
There's no point.
And I can rant about him again this time next week.
Daniel Ricciardo is the new Alex Albon.
Yeah, I think he is. I actually think he is becoming that.
Except, I don't think that's like a difference. I don't think there's a difference of opinion. Whereas, like with Albon, it was like me. Well, I was optimistic on him. I think Freddie at least started out more towards my end and then probably drifted a bit quicker. But I think for a lot of the season, I think me and Freddie were both quite optimistic on Albon. And I think with Ricciardo, we're just like, it's not great. But anyway, we shall see. We don't know. That might be all the previewing we do for the Austrian Grand Prix, or we might do another one with just me and Nigel, or someone else. We shall see. But if not, we will definitely be back for an Austria review. Yes, because you can't. We'll be definitely back for an Austria review. What will we be talking about then? Well, more cycling and football, definitely. At least I will be. Will England win?
Yes,
that's a prediction, actually.
We're getting to the final and losing.
Freddie, will England win?
Well, I spent all this money on a T-shirt, so they better win. Otherwise, I have to watch Germany win the whole thing.
I've got Germany in the sweepstakes, so it's not.
Oh, damn! I've got Switzerland, and they're playing France later. So fingers crossed.
Well, Ferran Torres has just scored, and he's in my fantasy team, so that's good.
Oh, he's in mine. Well. Yay!
Woo! Everyone is happy.
What a fantasy! Goodbye.